Good morning, everybody. My name is Paige Lee, and the topic I want to discuss today is emotional intelligence as a pedagogy in education. I hope you will enjoy my speaking and can learn some new concepts and ideas about emotional intelligence. So here is a brief overview of what I will be talking about during my presentation. The topic is divided into three parts. I will introduce the background information of the theory as contextual dimension, then how this theory is transformed into practices in enactment dimension, and finally, critically evaluate this pedagogy and how it affects students' well-being. The term emotional intelligence was proposed by these two men on the top left of the slide. From left to right are Peter Salovey and John Major. The concept of emotional intelligence was then developed by Daniel Goleman, a journalist and psychologist who was born in 1946. During the time he worked in the New York Times, he had interests in emotions and brains. Later in 1995, he set up his own model of emotional intelligence. In the same year, he published his first book, Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. This book is shown on the top right of the slide with the blue cover. The publication of this book made him and the term emotional intelligence begin to be known by people. Later on, in the more recent 10 years, he published two other books talking about working with emotional intelligence in the business field, and that made him become more famous. Looking at the model he proposed, there are 4 sections in total, listed as self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. The first 2 are categorized as the person's intrapersonal skills, meaning these characteristics are determined by the person himself, while the last 2 are interpersonal skills. These can be understood as how the person understands other feelings and get in touch with people around him or her. Speaking of the emotional intelligence, it is quite an abstract term, so next I'm going to talk about how it is actually used in the classroom as a pedagogy. According to the model proposed by Daniel Goleman in the previous slide, there is a program named Social Emotional Learning and that adapted the concept of emotional intelligence. The Education Endowment Foundation said this program is not focusing directly on academics, but regulating learning through emotions. I listed 5 examples corresponding to the model of emotional intelligence. Number 1, teachers can design cards with different emotions and draw facial expressions on them in order to help students recognize their feelings. This is how students use their self-awareness. Teachers can also read the scenario or use the trigger to help students understand quickly what their emotions should be, asking them to stand in the zone which they think is the most suitable area with different colors on it when teachers say the certain scenario. These are some effective methods for students to be aware of their own emotions. Secondly, for self-regulation, teachers can teach students to practice mindfulness. This will help the little ones learn how to calm down and concentrate. The third concept, empathy, is explained as how you understand others' feelings, even if you don't experience what they have been through. Talking with students and understanding them deep inside, not only about the academics, but with more care on what happened around them, to build a safe connection with them. As a result, students will open up their minds and make the learning process more effective. Finally, to develop students' social networking skills with others, teachers can set up group discussions or let them sit in the group in class to practice their interpersonal skills. Moving on to the report of Chinese students' mental health problems data, it is gradually increased. This furthermore indicates that students need the intervention of social emotional learning and use it in academic studying. According to Kai and Zhen's study of introducing social emotional learning as a pedagogy in the Chinese education system, they found out that some useful methods with embedding social emotional learning programs in school. Peer instruction learning can help students understand others' thoughts and make right decisions among peers. Debate is another method that examines students' speaking and logic skills and how they organize their speech under the stressful environment. The tests done by Shaffer and other researchers claim that emotional intelligence positively affects students' learning outcomes. The more they trust the teacher, the more they will have an optimistic mood in learning, as mentioned in the model of emotional intelligence, which is empathy and safe connections between students and teachers. Under this condition, students show more willingness to study and the determination on study. Based on the model of emotional intelligence, it is a traditional way of teaching and more teacher-focused. This pedagogy requires teacher with professional skills to teach children. However, it limits students themselves to self-reflect and experience through their emotions. If they face the same emotions during the study, they will probably not be able to handle it. Besides, it didn't mention how social emotional learning can be applied in outdoor activities. When students can directly feel and see things outside the classroom, they will be more aware of their own emotions. Social and emotional learning will affect students' well-being, definitely. The appearance of the mental health problems of children these days are because of the lack of intervention on social emotional learning in school and even at home. If we put our attention on students and can somehow foresee their emotions, this will help them to recognize it and avoid any unusual behaviors later. From my point of view, I see this pedagogy of social emotional learning as very useful, which can't be underestimated. During the time when I was in primary and secondary school, teachers rarely focused on the emotions we have, but just considered the emotions as a small thing. I don't even know how to relieve my worries or anxiety during the academic study process. I overcome these emotions myself when I entered high school. Some of my friends studying in Chinese traditional high school said the only emotional learning class had been cancelled because there's not enough time for teachers to teach other main subjects. The topic of the mental health problems in China among teenagers is still severe and sensitive, and society needs to be aware of the importance of social emotional learning. After all, social emotional learning can teach students to understand and handle their emotions, and this is a basic thing during academic learning. Educators, as well as parents, should be more concerned about the emotional well-being of students. That's all for my presentation, and thanks for listening.